And welcome back, everybody, to the Brett Snodgrass podcast. I got a special friend of mine on the podcast today, Mr. Jay Conner. What's going on, Jay?
Hello there, Brett. I mean, the name of your podcast is just sort of like
Yeah,
goes together like the Brett Snodgrass podcast. Maybe it should be podcasts. I don't know.
that is true. I have a very unique last name, and people say every time I say my last name Snodgrass, they're like, "Oh, do you know Bill Snodgrass from California?" And I'm like, "No, I have never heard of him before in my life." But anyways, everybody thinks that we're all related, the Snodgrasses in the entire United States. But man, it's such a pleasure to have you on the show today. I believe you actually were on another podcast of mine back in the day when we were the Simple Wholesaling podcast, and we talked about everything that you have accomplished, and I want to dig in to you to get to know you a little bit more, because I think you're probably the happiest person, at least in the top 5 of the happiest people that I know, and we're gonna dig into that. But I want to rattle off your highlight reel. I don't want to embarrass you at all, but I just want to give some of Jay Conner's highlights, guys. If you don't know Jay Conner, he has quite the extensive highlight reel here. So Jay Conner started investing in real estate in 2003. He has been averaging $67,000 per deal. That's a lot. I was a teacher for a while, Jay. That's a lot of money. That's like 1.5 years of my salary right there. You've rehabbed over 400 houses. He has automated his 7-figure business, and he only works about 10 hours a week in his business. He also coaches and consults other investors on the side. Consults about 2,000 investors. There was one time Jay raised over $2 million in 90 days. So just take that. He's a national speaker. He talks on private money, automation, and foreclosures. And he has a new book coming out. Right, Jay? Where to Get the Money Now.
Got a brand new book coming out. Where to Get the Money Now. How and where to get money for your real estate deals without relying on traditional or hard money lenders.
That's that. I want to know. I think everybody wants to know the answer to that question. I love that title. Where do we get the money? So Jay, let's just start off there. You are an expert. When I think of you also, I think of raising money. You've been an expert in raising private money. That's obviously where this book came from, and you talk a lot about on raising money, right? So let's just go over a few things that people can learn from this book. A couple of tips on where do we get the money at, Jay?
Sure. So I backed in to learning a lot about private money very quickly out of necessity. And so my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we started investing, as you said, in single family houses here in Eastern North Carolina back in 2003. And we're in a really small area, like Morehead City itself has got only 8,000 people. And our total target market that we invest in has only got 40,000 people. So, and I'll confess, Brett, I've never wholesaled a deal in my life. I think I know how. There's nobody around here to wholesale it to, right? Unless I'm going to wholesale it to myself, right? So we do 2 to 3 deals a month. But again, the average profit per single family house is $67,000. So from 2003 to 2009, January 2009 to be exact, I relied on local banks, mortgage companies. I'd never even heard of private money. I'd never heard of hard money lenders. I mean, I was just relying on, just traditional funding sources. And in January 2009, I picked up this actual receiver right here on my telephone, and I called him my banker. And I had 2 deals under contract. They represented over $100,000 in profit. And, I'd had this conversation lots of times. And I learned on that phone call very quickly that I'd been cut off. I had no line of credit. And I also learned very quickly, like the rest of the world.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd been cut off. So it wasn't like I was the Lone Ranger. And so I hung up the phone, and one of my mantras is, it's impossible to fail unless you decide to quit.
Mm.
And quitting wasn't in the options for me. So I called up my buddy Jeff, real estate investor in Greensboro. Asked him, what in the world are we going to do? He says, well, welcome to the club. They cut me off last week too. So Jeff's the one that told me about private money. So I learned about private money very, very quickly, and I put my program together. So in this world of private money, we make the rules, right? We offer up a private lending program to people that we have some kind of connection with. There's really three categories in answer to your question, Brett. Where do we get this private money? There's really three categories of private money. Now, first of all, I'm not talking hard money. I'm not talking institutional money. I'm talking about doing business with human beings, with individuals that loan us money, us real estate investors, from either their investment capital or their retirement account. I never heard of self-directed IRAs. Carol Joy and I now have 44 private lenders loaning us money on deals that we just move from house to house, project to project. And over half of them are using their retirement funds that they moved over to a self-directed IRA company approved by the IRS. And so that's a very, very important part of the private money. So it's an individual. Private lender is an individual that loans money from their investment capital or their retirement funds. So there's three categories of these private lenders. First category is people you know, people you got some kind of connection with. They're in your cell phone, they're on your email list. You know, if you're over 50 years old, they're on your Christmas card list, where your Facebook list. And I don't mean your fake Facebook friends. I mean, you're like people you really know.
Mm-hmm.
That's one category. Second category is what I call your expanded warm market. So my students sometimes will say to me, they say, Jay, my warm market's broke. My people ain't got no money, right? Well, first of all, I don't believe them. But secondly, I also teach and practice how to grow your warm market and connections by getting involved in the community, Rotary clubs, Chamber of Commerce, Business Networking International, et cetera. And then the third category of private lenders are what we call existing private lenders. They're already loaning money out to other real estate investors, and they're individuals already doing it. Well, how do you find them people? Well, there's the hard way and there's the easy way. They're all on public record. I mean, they're loaning money out collateralized by real estate. So it's either a mortgage or a deed of trust, like you're in North Carolina, that's on public record. So when I started raising private money back in 2009, I hired my real estate attorney's paralegal to search public records here locally. And in 90 days, we only found one. One individual. I said, there's got to be an easier way, right? So we hired some sophisticated software programmers and engineers, and we put together Jay Connor's private lender data feed. So we've got software every month that goes out to all public records in all the states and gets all the public information on individuals that are loaning money out collateralized by real estate. We get their name, their address, the interest rate that they are collecting, the amount of money they're loaning out. And so myself and my followers and students and et cetera tap into that data feed to get the existing private lenders. So those are the three categories of where these private lenders are.
No, I love that. And definitely we can learn probably, guys, just all that information in Jay's new book. And Jay, I want to ask you, how important, and most of our listeners, a lot of them are real estate investors or business owners, but how important has private money and being able to borrow from private individuals, from human beings, not from institutions, how important has that been to your business?
Wow. That's a great question. Here's the answer. So when I was cut off from the local banks in 2009, January 2009, from the time we started using private money and raising private money, that first 12 months from February 2009 to January of the next year, 2010, Brett, our business tripled.
Wow.
It tripled. And here's why. What was going on at that time is, foreclosures were piling up, right? And lenders were not lending. But I had very quickly, I had a problem, a good problem. I had millions of dollars sitting on the shelf, pledged to me to put to work. And so I was able, I mean, you couldn't get a loan on these foreclosures, right? You had to have the cash to buy them, either at auction or wherever they were being put up. And so I had the cash and I was able to do it. I mean, my definition of coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. And the reason I say that is because I don't think it was any accident. Mm. In fact, success doesn't happen accidentally. Mm-hmm. That's a long conversation right there. But I don't think it was any accident that I got cut off and then I continued to search for better ways, quicker ways to get funding for deals, that I was opened up to this world of private money. So it was a difficulty. It was a challenge. It was painful when I heard my banker say, you don't have any more funding here, right? And I had a perfect credit score and had many years of good relationship there. So it's like, if it hadn't been for that difficulty and that challenge, then quite frankly, Brett, you and I wouldn't know each other, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I wouldn't have been in real estate. I wouldn't have stayed in real estate. I wouldn't be in the mastermind that I'm in the mastermind with you. And another huge benefit that played out was in just 2 years after starting to use private money, one of my passions is teaching. I love to teach. I love to teach Bible class at church. I've been known to fill in the pulpit now and then. They tell me I got preacher hair, I've been a great Pentecostal, but I'm not Pentecostal. Anyway, if it hadn't have been for that difficulty, I wouldn't have started, Carol Joy and I wouldn't have started our education and training business, training and inspiring other real estate investors how to get funding for their deals without relying on institutional money. Mm-hmm. So it's very interesting when you look back at your history and what you've been through. And it's what those painful times at the moment you were going through, what that can actually lead you to, right? Because it all comes down to our choices, right? Circumstances do not have to dictate your future, right? Because no matter what's going on, we still have a choice.
No, exactly. And a lot of people that come on this podcast have gone through some really, hardships in their life, and they come out and it has been a blessing to them. And when I think about money, and it's funny because we're in the real estate game, so we talk about private money all the time. It's just part of our natural conversation about borrowing money from private individuals. But what I forget sometimes is the majority of the world still do not know that this even exists, that they don't even know that they can even lend to an investor and make a return on their money. They think that they have to buy a mutual fund or buy a stock, and that's the only way they can make a return, or put it in a CD. I was actually talking to, and this guy is outside of the real estate space, but he's a painter. And this happens all the time. He's a painter and he's building a business and he's getting some amazing contracts. He's painting like this arena right now, and it's just a huge job, this commercial arena at a university. And it's a $200,000 job, but they don't pay him at certain increments, right? But he has his crew and he has to pay his crew and make payroll, but he doesn't get all of his money until the end, kind of like a flip, right, Jay?
Right.
And so he called me up and said, I don't know, I'm working with a bank, but they're dragging their feet. Like I can't get my hands on the money and I only need like $15,000. Anyways, I got to open him up to the world, to private money. And I was like, well, I'll lend you the money. and that was it. And here we go. And then he just, I didn't even know I could do that, and it was just a small thing. But, how many people and students have you been able to help open their eyes up to this world of private money and changes their life?
Well, it's in the thousands. I don't know exactly how many. I mean, like you, I have my own podcast and I do a lot of teaching on there. So I have no way really. Well, yeah, I do. We're coming across right now 400,000 downloads and listens, but not including those. I mean, the actual students that I work with, in a very close way, it's it's over 2,000
Wow. That's
since
amazing.
since 2011.
That's amazing. And obviously you've seen a lot of success because when people are building a business, I mean, this is probably the key ingredient, especially when you're growing a business. I mean, obviously there's people and there's data, but it's hard to do any type of business without access to money.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the most common questions that I get from new real estate investors that are, haven't done their first deal yet, they'll say, Jay, there's all kinds of ways to make money in real estate. And because they've been to other seminars and this and that, and they'll say, what's the quickest way to get like just an infusion of cash in real estate? Well, the biggest infusion of cash that I know is private money. And here's why. When we're borrowing private money, we typically always borrow more than we need to purchase the house. And there's always a large equity cushion in the deal as well. Now, of course, for this to work, you got to know how to find discounted houses, right? Because you always give your private lender a really nice equity cushion between how much they loan to you and how much that property is worth or is going to be worth after it's all beautiful. So, I mean, it's very common for me to bring home a $30,000 or $40,000 check when I buy the house because I've borrowed more money than is needed on the purchase. Now I'm going to use a big chunk of that for the rehab, but I may have 10,000 or 15,000 extra just laying over there of equity that I've pulled out because every house has marketing costs and there's operating expenses and et cetera. But that's one of the biggest and quickest ways that I know for, now is there risk involved on doing that deal? Of course, there's risk involved in doing anything that you do, right? So, of course, another big way is what you and your team has done for years, and that's wholesaling. I mean, you're in a lot of cases, you're selling a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And don't have to go through the rehab process and thus and so.
Yeah. But I still think, and a lot of wholesalers ask me all the time, well, I don't need any money. I'm just going to assign the contracts and things like that. But I think that if you really want to run a professional business, yes, I can assign a contract if it works out. But there's so many times that we have to buy the house. We have to take it down. We said we were going to buy it. We don't want to let the seller down. Maybe something happens to a buyer, and we do have to buy those homes. And so having access to money and private money is so important, even to our business as well. Jay, and your new book has came out, right? So February the 17th came out. It's Where to Get the Money Now. And where can someone, if they want that book, where can they get that at?
Well, I'm going to give them two places. So either A, they can go to Amazon and pay $19.95, or since they're listening to you, I'm going to give a website where they can go get it for free, and we'll actually ship it to them in the mail. The only thing I ask is just cover the shipping costs, but it's free. And here's the website where they can get Where to Get the Money Now at www.jayconner.com. I'm an ER, not an OR. There's my name right there, jayconner.com/book, BOOK. And I'll autograph it and we'll ship it out to you.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Jay. So if you're listening in, go to jayconner.com/book and get that free book. And Jay, you spent like 3 years on this book. I mean, you put your sweat and tears and early mornings, late nights.
My lands. Hey, I mentioned the word pain, right? But one thing that I really the reason I get compliments sometimes on my teaching is because God has given me a knack of taking what could be complicated and just making it very, very simple.
Mm.
So that was my one of my biggest objectives with this book is for anybody with average intelligence with some motivation can take this book and they can go start getting money for their deals. I even go into the mindset, right? I talk about the real estate that exists between your ears, and we got to get that right,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Before you're actually, raising the money, because there's no chasing, there's no begging, there's no selling. A big part of the framing of raising money is putting on your teacher hat and teaching people, as you just mentioned, Brett, teaching people what private money is, teaching them about self-directed IRAs. And, you have that mindset. And as long as you're teaching people what this thing is, you don't even have to ask for money. In fact, Brett, you may have heard me say this before. I've never asked anybody for money.
Mm.
I've never, since and right now we got between $7 and $8 million that we move around.
Mm-hmm.
And so I teach them, and here's the deal. If they've got investment capital or retirement funds, they're going to be asking you after you, enlighten them, they're going to be asking you, well, how do I get started? I mean, do I write you a check? I mean, what do I do? Right? Of course, the answer to that is no, because I don't borrow any unsecured funds in my business. It's all collateralized by real estate. So they wire their funds to the real estate attorney, or if you're using a closing agent, such as a title company or escrow company. And, everything that we borrow is collateralized and secures the private lender.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, whenever you're talking to people about money, again, Jay said you don't have to actually ask for money. And I think that I forget sometimes that they want to make a return on their money. I mean, and they don't even know the answer. I've talked to a lot of private individuals. Again, I say, well, you can lend, we buy a house, you can lend to our company, put it against the house. And they said, I didn't know we could do that. And I didn't know I could earn this return on this money. And you've been just a gift, because I'm making great return with your money, and it's collateralized, and it's just an amazing experience. So I think that sometimes we get scared, because when you go in the direction of thinking you have to ask for money, then yeah, it's like nobody wants to do that. But if it can make it a win-win, and I mean, for one, I lend money. So, the best way to earn a return in your retirement account, I mean, most of us that are listening to this podcast have some sort of retirement account. I have a self-directed IRA, and I've done a lot of stuff out of my self-directed IRA. I've bought rentals, I've bought a house, and I flipped the house out of it. But the easiest, best way, the only thing I do now is lend money. It's the easiest way. It's tax-free.
What's beautiful about that is that you can be totally passive. You don't have to go as a private lender. You don't have to go. You can be in the real estate investing business, but you don't have to find deals. You don't have to fix up any houses. You don't have to market deals. You don't have to negotiate with general contractors. You don't have to worry with contractors not showing up and not getting the job done. You just sit back and let your retirement account collect checks.
Yeah. And it's awesome. And the reason why I do it is because I have a Roth retirement account, and I don't get a lot of the tax benefits that I would get if I was owning a rental property, taking all that depreciation, things like that, getting the tax breaks. So I was like, I'm going to take all the headaches out and just lend money. So
there
it's
you
great.
go.
Great stuff. So if you guys have a retirement account, you can, study, talk to Jay, and his team, and how can you roll an old retirement account over a self-directed retirement account and learn how to do that. It's the best way to build wealth out of your retirement account. So, Jay, I'm going to transition just a little bit. And as we were talking before the show, we're in a mastermind group together, the Collective Genius, and you're kind of known as the guy that is just full of life, full of joy. You always have a smile on your face, and whenever people talk to you, you just kind of bring joy out of people, or like, even if someone's feeling down, they talk to Jay and they're like, oh my gosh, I just feel so good. You're like a little shot to the arm, just giving us some of that dopamine, but some of that Jay Connor dopamine. So I want to just talk to you about that. I mean, has this been something that you have had to learn? I mean, is it just your character? It's just who you are. You wake up and you just kind of have that joy. Um, has it been just, is there a process that you've gone through on how to map out how to be happier? Like, what is it for you?
Right. Well, I believe it's a combination of things. First of all, um, growing up in the church in a Christian family, my granddaddy on my mother's side had the biggest and most impactful spiritual impact in my life of anybody. He was an elder of the church, and I spent a lot of time around him. So, number one, environment and upbringing. Like for example, I never heard him say a cuss word in his life. I never heard him talk down about people. I never heard him complain. Not
Mm.
the first time that I ever hear him complain about anything, right? And so my upbringing and being around, just some wonderful people in my family and folks at the church, but also, so I say, some people say, well, it's my nature. It's my nature. Well, I think your nature is like what you grow up around,
Yeah.
right? It's sort of, so, but then in addition to that, so growing up, I didn't enjoy reading. And I finally figured out when I was 24 years old why I didn't enjoy reading. And that was I hadn't started reading anything that I liked. so, so I started reading books that I really enjoy. And so, um, well, it's called the self-improvement, but I don't like the self-improvement title because I think God's involved in all of it. I don't think, I know he is. And so it's what you consume,
Hmm.
right? It's what you bring into your brain is what's going to affect your outlook and your attitude. And so I just started reading all these self-improvement books, if you will, spiritual growth books. Like the first one I read was University of Success by Og Mandino. And that book just catapulted me. And I'm like, man, I'm addicted to these kind of books, now. And so I mean, I'm 60 years old now. So since that time, I continually am looking for and reading positive books,
Mm.
right? Another big thing, as I mentioned, environment is who do you hang around, right? So I don't know. I mean, a lot of people have been given credit to this quote, and that is, let me see the five people that you spend the most time with, and I'll see why you are the way you are.
Right. Or the average. You're the average of the five people that you hang out with. Yeah.
That's right. And so, uh, if any of your listeners would like to scale up their level of joy
Hang.
and happiness, take a look at who you're hanging around. You might need
Yeah.
to change who you're hanging around, right? Um, and one thing that I remind myself of, either directly or some kind of way every morning, is I have a choice to respond any way I want to anything that happens.
Mm.
I went about 5 years ago. I went to Jack Canfield's training called Breakthrough to Success. And I learned a formula that I had never heard of before, but it makes so much sense. And so here's how to have more joy and happiness. So the formula is O plus R. Excuse me. E plus O, E as in Edward, E plus O. I'm going to get it right the third time, Brett. I'm going to get it right the third
All
time.
right.
My word. E plus R equals O. There it is. E plus R equals O. What that stands for, I'm going to explain how it works. E stands for event. All right. There's an event in your life. Maybe you brought that event about in your life. Maybe you didn't bring that event about in your life. So there's an event in your life. Now, you get to control the outcome of how that event affects your life, right? The R stands for response. So you got an event in your life. Now we have your response, and the event plus your response equals O, which is the outcome of that event.
Mm.
Well, guess what? You can't change the E. You can't change the event because it's already happened.
Mm-hmm.
But you have 100% control over how you want to respond to that event. Therefore, you're in control of the outcome of that event. I'll give you two quick examples. One is I just told my story. The event was I was cut off from the bank.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't do anything to get cut off from the bank. In fact, I did everything for the bank to be chasing me. I made my payments on time. I had a great credit score. I did what I said, blah, blah, blah. But that happened. Now, I got to choose my response. And there's a whole list of responses I could have chosen. Well, I quit. I can go dig a hole and cry or whatever, but I chose, and of course, I've already told my story about what the response was to that. Another example, Carol Joy and I have got a very, very dear friend that we've known now for about 15 years. And so his name's David. And so David, all his life until about 5 years ago, he blamed everything that went wrong in his life on his father dying when he was 7 years old. Mm. So, he was right at 280 pounds most of his life. And all he wanted to do was sleep. And he only did enough to get by. And so he woke up to this E plus R equals O. Mm. And he finally realized that he's got 100% responsibility to respond, the ability to respond to that event of his father passing away when he was 7 years old. Totally changed his life. In a year and a half, he lost over 100 pounds. He runs 7 miles a day by just simply waking up to the fact of you get to choose what you want your response to be.
Wow. That is such a simple, life-changing formula, and I think that there's so many people that just need to hear that, and sometimes it's just the simple things, guys, that can change your life. And I love, Jay, you talked about you just take a complex thing and you make it really, really simple, and I think sometimes we just overcomplicate it. We think, well, this is going on, and if you just say, well, I can't control this event, but I can control my response, and it could just change everything.
Another quick tip on the where you are on the joy ladder, right? The joy and happiness. So, Solomon said in the Old Testament, as a man thinks, so he is. Mm. As a woman thinks, so she is. And the Apostle Paul in the New Testament also said, bring every thought into captivity. So when I look at those two pieces of scripture and verse, right? By the way, the book that's had, of course, the most impact on me is the Bible. That goes without saying. Mm-hmm. But what those two verses tell me, Brett, is, well, as a man or a woman thinks, so you are. It all starts with what are we thinking about, mm-hmm. right? And when Paul says to bring every thought into captivity, that means I've got the ability to choose what I think about. And so if everything starts with what I'm thinking about, then I want to be very, very careful and intentional about what I think about, right? Because thinking leads to your actions, and then all that leads to your character and ends up being to your destiny and all that. So I'm very intentional. I'm not perfect at it, but I'm very intentional about what I allow my mind to think about and ponder on and just, because a lot of people just let the mind go to where the tide takes it. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So that all ties into responding to events. Mm-hmm. Right. But also, your goal setting, what are you focusing on? Because you've heard it said, what you focus on expands. So if you want something really good to expand your life, then be thinking about the good stuff.
Exactly, man. You're like just throwing gold nuggets out right now because it's funny. I started to do this podcast and do some of these videos on purpose and living out your purpose. And I've been stuck at sometimes in my life, and people have been reaching out to me and they'd be like, I don't really know what my purpose is, and I don't really know how to find it. And I'm just kind of going and with whatever. And a lot of it, honestly, what I've been experiencing, I want to ask you this question, has been social media. And, I'm in this Collective Genius Mastermind group, and I'm in another mastermind group as well. And now, if I'm consuming social media, your mind starts to compare with other people. And I have found, so many people, I believe that the reason that they aren't feeling good about themselves is because they are constantly comparing themselves to other people that they think are doing better and whatever that is. So what's your take on that? Because I know you're involved with social media. I watch your singing with Carol Joy sometimes, and I know you're an entrepreneur, and all entrepreneurs most of the time are involved with social media. But do you have any take? Like, talk to those people out there that they're having trouble just comparison and seeing what other people are doing, and when they see like a good video just like this, they might be watching this podcast and be like, "Wow, I wish I was Jay because he's awesome." I don't know. What's your take on all that?
Yeah. So first of all, realize that a lot of what you see on social media isn't real to start with.
Yeah.
It's like, and don't get me wrong, a lot of it is, and people will go on there and they'll just, bear their burdens, right? But so that's an interesting question, Brett. I hadn't thought about it a lot, but I will tell you this: the only time I hang out on social media is when I'm providing something to other people. I don't consume social media as a person, right? So I'm not saying you should or you shouldn't, but I'm just too busy. I'm not setting myself up at all as being any better than anybody else. I'm just talking about what I do and what I don't do. I mean, by and large, I don't watch the news because 95% of it's negative, right?
It's again, I think it's what you put into your mind. It's what you think about. If you're consuming social media, that's what you're thinking about. If you think watching the news, that's what you think about.
So that's a very interesting question because I really hadn't analyzed. But since you asked the question, I go, well, I don't hang out there unless I'm giving.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, and that's what I've heard more and more people. And I realize that if I don't consume social media or consume the news, you start to be more of who God made you to be, right?
Yeah,
you start
exactly.
to be.
Oh, my lands, Brett. I got to share this. So one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from anybody in my life on how to feel better if you're feeling down or you're just like, you're beating up yourself or whatever. So her name is Beulah Rayner. She lived to be in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. She lived to be 102 and a half. She wanted to make sure you heard that half, 102 and a half, right? And she was the first female tenured professor at Wake Forest University. My dad, who is now 87, took freshman English underneath her. She was still a professor when I got to Wake Forest as a freshman. And what just a wise woman. And so I spent a lot of Sunday dinners at her kitchen table. She adopted me. When Carol Joy and I got married, our first 2 years were in Winston-Salem, and then Beulah adopted Carol Joy. They became best friends. But here's the advice she gave me, and I've never forgotten it, and it is a gem. If you're feeling down or you're beating up yourself and you just want to feel better, go do something for somebody else.
Love that.
And when you go do something for somebody else, you're not thinking about yourself. When you're serving somebody else and you're encouraging somebody else, or you're just doing something for somebody else, that could be calling them up on the phone and just say, hey, you were on my mind. I was just calling to see how your week is going. How you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, look, you just ask that question, and people love to talk about their favorite subject, right? Which is themselves,
That's right.
right? So you just show a little genuine interest in somebody else. And I promise you, when you get through with that conversation, you're going to feel better because you were serving and you were thinking about somebody else instead of thinking about yourself.
I love that. I love that. I think it's so true. I think we can get caught up sometimes with ourselves, and that we live in a very self-centered culture. It's all about me and my and what I have in my business or my life or whatever. And I even get caught up in that too. Even sometimes when I'm doing these podcasts or these videos, and I'm like, man, like, did I sound right? And oh, I got tongue tied here, or what are people gonna view me as when I'm doing these shows, right? And honestly, when I start,
Sometimes you can't remember the formula.
yeah, I know. But the thing is like, it's like, then I catch myself in my mind. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm like, I'm thinking about myself. Like, who cares? Like, all I need to think about is, am I bringing value to whoever's listening to this show? That's all. That's it.
Exactly.
And once you do that, it all changes. And I'm just
That's
like,
right.
let's
That's
do it.
right.
Let's go.
Yeah. Focus on the other person.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Jay, so much. I just super enjoy just chatting with you and talking with you, and wish you so much success in your business. And make sure you guys get Jay's new book that just came out, and Where to Get the Money Now. You can get that on his website, Jay Conner. That's with an ER, jayconner.com/book. And Jay, before we go here, so you mentioned your age, so I'll just say how 60 years old, and we've talked about a lot of different things on this show, but one of the things I really, really admire about you is you're just you, right? I mean, especially when I watch you and your wife, Carol Joy. Make sure you guys go onto Facebook. Jay Conner and Carol Joy, they do Facebook and they do the piano. He's pounding on the piano, and they just did Name That Tune. They're singing songs, and it's just amazing. But when I watch that, I'm like, man, that's just Jay. He is just himself, right? And other people be like, I don't know if I really want to do that. But this is the thing that I really want people to know is on this show is how can they be more of themselves? I mean, God created them to be them, not to be Jay, not to be Brett, not to be anybody else, but to be them. Like, they're very unique. They're wired in a very unique way. And what would you say to them? Like, encourage them to be more of them.
So I'll answer it sort of sideways.
All right.
And that is, I just heard this in the past year, and it was like a revelation. But it's so simple. And the revelation was, if you want to be more of you, and what ties in with that is be happier more of the time. Are you ready for this one, Brett?
Mm-hmm.
Just do more of what makes you happy.
I love it. Yeah.
so it's like, COVID comes along, in the past. I want to keep this as evergreen as we can, but COVID comes along, people are shut down inside, depressed and whatever. And I'm going, well, what is Jay and Carol Joy? Well, we love piano, we love singing. So let's just go on Facebook and let's just do some crazy Name That Tune stuff on Monday evenings at 7:30 Eastern time. And when we finish doing that, I feel and she feels more of who we are because we just played out what we enjoy doing, right? So I went to Panera Bread and met a good friend of mine that we go to church together, went there last Friday. And so we just had this brainstorm of sharing with each other what just really gives us fulfillment, what makes us feel satisfied, what do we really enjoy doing. And then we committed to each other, all right, we're just going to do more of this stuff.
Yeah, Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I don't know as I answered your question, but that's what came to mind anyway.
I think it does, and I was with a coach, and I've been kind of going through this transition as well, and he just kept saying that to me. He's like, I don't care what you do, I just want you to be more of you.
Mm.
And the thing that sometimes people might not like what you're going to do. They might think it's silly or stupid, but you just need to be more
Oh,
of you.
yeah. I can tell you one way to be more of you, and that is what other people think of you is none of your business. Okay.
That's right. Love it. Love it. That's
So,
awesome, Jay.
if you want to be more of you, then, stop asking other people what they think of you.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show, Jay. This is a wrap with Jay Connor. Make sure you check out jayconnor.com. Get his book, jayconnor.com/book. And check that out. It is out. It is ready for you. Make sure you go to the Brett Snodgrass YouTube channel, subscribe to it, ring that bell, and get the notifications. We got videos coming out each week, and we got some really cool stuff that I am going to be putting together so Brett can be more of Brett. So stay tuned for that. But thanks so much, Jay, for being on the show. Appreciate you, buddy. God bless.
Brett, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.